Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast. Happy Thursday to you. And it's officially the offseason for everybody in baseball. Texas Rangers finally win a World Series. How about that? Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Cody Delmendo. We have a lot to talk about. Hello to everybody in the live chat. Hit the thumbs up on the way in, and then hit it again on the way out. This is Chicago. You can vote twice. That's the way we roll. Make sure you subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page. We'd appreciate that. Today, we will continue our report cards. They might not be as positive as they were the last few days, and that's because the Godfather, Michael Collada, has asked for some negativity in the podcast, and we will bring the negativity today if it's needed.
Yes, big of us. Absolutely. Credit to us.
Credit to us. But today is also the anniversary of Cubs winning the World Series. We'll talk about 2016. Oh, yeah. People forget, right? And so we will talk about that. Chris says, I'm crying, not a good work day. Chris, the good news is we may grade you in the live YouTube chat today, possibly at the end.
Also,
so this could be a 5-star day for you.
I always say this. The good news is we will all die someday, too. Okay. So if you're having a bad work day, just remember.
That's right. Start off the negativity right away.
Yeah, that's true.
No, you mentioned the Rangers finally winning a World Series.
Can you believe
they
it?
They were the oldest team without a World Series, right? Because the Guardians have the longest drought, but they've at least won
more than 50 years they've been playing in Arlington.
Do you know who the two oldest franchises now that have never won a World Series?
Colorado Rockies.
Milwaukee Brewers.
Milwaukee Brewers.
Against the Milwaukee Brewers?
Yeah, Brewers are definitely one.
Well, I knew that would make
the Rockies have to be getting.
Did we mention the Milwaukee Brewers?
They're actually
Seattle Mariners.
Not even close. Mariners are a little closer, but not them either.
They put a graphic up on it on Fox last night.
Padres.
Padres. Yeah. Did we mention the Brewers?
Yeah, I think we mentioned.
Are
the
you
Brewers.
Sure?
Yeah.
The Milwaukee Brewers.
They've
longest
never won.
drought. They've never won one.
No.
Milwaukee Brewers. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, technically the franchise because they were the Seattle Pilots when they first.
Whatever. Don't let the facts get away with your story.
But
Becky says I'm an awesome person. All caps.
Why does Becky always give? She always gives you the.
Well, she's trying to confirm that she's going to get a 5-star review, and more and more each day, I'm thinking she's probably a 5-star member of the chat.
She is here every day. I got to give her credit. Credit to her.
Attendance. Always attendance.
It does matter. Especially, I think attendance during the month of October when the Cubs aren't in the playoffs, if you're still here, it matters. So, Omar, I see him in the chat every day, the entire month of October and into November, It does matter for, that 5-star rating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, we know Cleveland's still on there. Of course, they did change their nickname, Ron. But yeah, beating them 7 years ago obviously changed our lives. I'm sure there are a lot of happy Rangers fans. I'm actually happy for Rangers fans out there. I didn't need to see Arizona win again. No offense to our friends at PHNX. I'm glad there's a different champion. More importantly, I'm glad that spending money was the final way that the champion won, so that maybe as we head to the GM meetings here pretty soon, and then the winter meetings pretty soon, that Tom Ricketts, Jed Hoyer, Carter Hawkins and company look at it and say, hey, maybe spending big bucks isn't such a bad idea after all. Didn't work right away, but it worked.
Yeah,
it did work.
Yeah, I you know what? We always say you can't buy championships, but paying money for good players is going to help.
Corey Seager was unreal.
Yeah, Corey Seager was unreal.
And the postseason.
Awesome.
Marcus Semien played every single game for the Rangers this year.
Yeah, former White Sox, by the way.
So, the two of the guys
credit to them for letting
spent
him go.
a lot of money on
them.
2 off
and they
seasons
traded
ago.
Dane Duddy, too.
The two guys they spent the most money
call.
on 2 off seasons ago were major contributors to their World Series run. That's just an example of maybe spending all the money in the world like the Mets or the Padres might not get you anywhere, but also not spending money won't either. You have to spend money the right way, smart investments, all that. What did Jed Hoyer call it last year?
Intelligent spending.
Intelligent spending. Right? You have to do it. You have to make the right decisions. You can't make mistakes when you give out those big contracts. But especially if you're a team with the resources like the Cubs, you have to take some risks on contracts like that. Jason Hayward's still their biggest contract, and even then, that was still a pretty big signing for him. But they haven't obviously had a bigger one since, and now they're in a position where, hey, a team just won the World Series with 2 major additions a couple of years ago, and different trade deadline acquisitions and stuff.
Someone in the chat mentions DeGrom. I mean, he got
true.
hurt early, and it didn't matter. They won the World Series without him, but he was the top arm on the market last.
And they went out and traded for Scherzer, who he also had his injuries during his Rangers tenure, tenure.
And also, yes, what you said related to the Rangers winning because they spent money. They also developed well. To me, you got to do both. You really do got to do both. You can't be like the Mets and the Padres who threw stupid money at teams, and you can't act like the Oakland A's. You know what I mean? And the Diamondbacks didn't act like the Oakland A's. And you don't have to be the Royals. But yeah, you know what I mean? The Diamondbacks were 21st in payroll, but the thing is that they way overperformed not only their projection and expectations, but they had so many dudes that I don't think anyone expected to be that big of an impact on their roster. I mean, what happened for them this year it's almost like, even though they didn't win the World Series, it's like the best consolation prize you can ever get, in my opinion. Again, they
overachieved.
Yeah, they way overachieved.
They feel like the 2015 Cubs, only they got to the World Series a little bit.
They have to.
They have just a lot of good young players now. If they decide to spend money and just add to that, right? They're not going to be the ones that spend Steve Cohen money or whatever, but they have a very solid young core who's going to be locked up for a while. If they go out and spend some money and add some established players to that team, you might see them be a very competitive ball club for a while in the National League.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, Jordan Lawler is going to be a guy for them next year. He was one of the top prospects in all of baseball this year that got a late call-up. He got called up a few weeks before Pico Armstrong for the Cubs, but we saw him at Wrigley for a little bit. They kind of just threw him in there, and eventually the major league level had caught up to him, and he just didn't perform well for them. But they're still obviously they're going to be high on him going into next year, and I think he's going to get a full opportunity. So you add that type of talent to that lineup and defensively to what they already have, and and like you said, if they do spend some money, add a starter. Yeah, they could be a scary team. I don't know if they can win the division. I don't know if that matters, but they can certainly be in that wild card race next year. So I don't think what the Diamondbacks did is any kind of fluke. It's more of I'm kind of afraid of what they're going to be next year if they do actually spend money.
Well, the Rangers didn't win their division. They won the World Series, right? And you mentioned adding pitchers, and I know people in the chat don't want to hear too much about Texas, but it can be a blueprint for the Cubs moving forward. A lot of these teams can. First of all, don't let injuries be the excuse for you not having a good season. The Rangers built so much depth with all that money and all that developing, and then big moves down the stretch, Scherzer, that it didn't matter that they lost Jacob deGrom, this big money free agent, right at the beginning of the season. It didn't matter necessarily to the Phillies that Rhys Hoskins, one of their best players, was out all year. So I don't want to hear the Cubs say, well, injuries derail us with the bullpen, right? We got a lot of that. Well, the bullpen was really banged up. Yeah, you have to build so much depth that you don't need it. Here's what was said about, Cody was saying of the moves that were missed by the Cubs, right? You were saying Nathan Eovaldi.
Oh, yeah.
5 postseason wins. Okay, he has a 2-year deal, and now he ties a major league postseason record with 5 wins in one postseason. You know what they were saying? This is from an article on The Athletic in December last year, and it's about the Rangers getting free agent pitcher Nathan Eovaldi, 2 years, $34 million. Now, that's not an insane contract, okay? That's the type of contract that, the Cubs better add at least somebody like that this offseason. Go find yourself this year's Nathan Eovaldi. They tried on some guys that we're going to grade later in other positions on the field that didn't work. This one obviously worked. They described him on The Athletic as a 32-year-old right-hander, had a 3.16, and they go through the thing, and they're like, yeah, but injuries have been his problems. And they ultimately describe him as Yeah, Eovaldi was the best free agent left on the market, and Texas swooped in and added more depth. He was a depth piece, and he just won you the World Series. He won you 5 postseason games, and in the offseason, almost a year ago today, The Athletic was describing this guy as, he's banged up, he's got some injuries, he's a depth piece.
I haven't forgot what he did with the Red Sox in 18.
Yeah.
When they signed,
now you look at him and you say he's a big name. He's a big game pitcher.
He was a guy that I wanted. You'd have to go back and look at find the exact audio what day, but I remember when we talked about certain pitchers that the Cubs could sign, Eovaldi was a guy that I was high on.
But just like other free agents this offseason, while we look at the free agent market and you say, okay, maybe the perfect guy's not out there. Mm-hmm. You don't know enough about Yamamoto. You don't know enough about this guy. He still had flaws. He had the injury check mark next to him where it was like, well, this guy's not super durable. How much are you going to give him? If he didn't have flaws, they wouldn't have been able to get him for 2 years and $34 million. So Jed needs to find those players this offseason. Who's the guy that you can buy at the right price? I don't care if they want to go break the bank, that too. But this guy was thought as a depth piece, and he turned out to be potentially one of their 3 MVPs of the whole postseason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say this, the Rangers, even going into this year, when we didn't really believe that they were even playoff contenders, you looked at their roster and you're like, well, there's definitely some star talent there. They could certainly be in the playoff race. They obviously had higher expectations than the Cubs. So what I think perhaps the reason that Eovaldi went there is because he liked that roster that they had built up. And I'm not necessarily like yelling at the Cubs about, oh, you chose Taillon over Eovaldi. All I'm saying is that you could have got the exact same type of production, basically. Like Eovaldi and Taillon, like they've been middle of the rotation starters for their entire career. But Eovaldi has unreal playoff experience and success.
Pelts on the wall.
Right. Like, to me, right now, yes, it looks like a massive miss by the Cubs. I still believe Taillon can be better, and I said that when we graded Taillon, and maybe it works out for the Cubs in the long run anyway. But in the short term right now, it's like, considering, and especially considering the fact that they have all these young pitchers coming up, like a Cade Horton, like a Ben Brown, like Jordan Wicks, you could have got a guy on a 2-year deal instead of a 4-year deal, and you wouldn't be going in this offseason with a rotation that's actually full right now, but it's still not good enough to make you feel like this is a rotation that can take you to the World Series, right? And so to me right now in this moment, that's what bothers me the most about this scenario that we're in,
right?
Well,
the year before, the Rangers spent on Semien, Seager, and I think it was Gray.
Oh yeah, John Gray.
$500 million. It didn't work out. They were not a good team.
No. Right.
And a lot of people laughed at him, including me, laughed at him for spending the money. Mm-hmm. But how did they fix it? They went out and they signed DeGrom, the biggest name on there, because they were like, okay, it was the pitching. It wasn't really the hitting that failed us. It was the pitching. They went out and they spent on DeGrom. They added Eovaldi, and then they traded for Scherzer. They added all 3 pitchers in 1 year. Mm-hmm. I'm not suggesting the Cubs need to do that, but make Taillon your depth guy. Just like they made Eovaldi their. Don't make him the major signing. Mm-hmm. Hope that he develops into the major signing. You can't go into it and say, well, if this guy could be our ace, he's kind of been up and down throughout his career. We see that potential. He's got to be the depth guy that then surprises you and is like, wow, look what we got. Jameson Taillon just won us 4 postseason games, and we didn't spend top money on him. You still have to go get the top money guy, and add him to Steele. I don't know. Somebody said Snell. I saw the Sports Illustrated had an interesting thing talking about the Padres having to, they took out this loan from the bank, $50 million loan from the bank just to make their payments this offseason, because money's kind of, well, everybody knows money's kind of weird right now. So they took out a $50 million loan, and obviously it sounds like they're going to have to shed some payroll this offseason to figure things out. Mm-hmm. So that's where we've heard the Juan Soto thing. Sports Illustrated suggested, well, what if a guy like Michael Wacha becomes available now? Wouldn't the Cubs be, and they had the Cubs as one of the teams that would be interested in that trade. Is Wacha a guy that would help fix that depth to the Cubs? How much would adding Wacha help? Like, what if you could add Wacha in a trade and sign Yamamoto? Now you've added 2 guys to the list, and you're like, okay, because we still don't know. We're still waiting for the answer from the Cubs to say, okay, Marcus Stroman is picking up his option. Okay, we've reached a deal and reworked things with Kyle Hendricks.
Which, as far as the options go, will come by Monday, the next few days, by November 6th or whatever, because
we're going to know
5 days after the World Series.
So that's the next big answer for the Cubs.
Soon.
But so I ask you, is Wacha a trade that you would pursue if you were the Cubs?
We're assuming that he's going to be part of the Juan Soto trade, or just separately,
or separate.
I mean, I don't know how it would work, but I'm looking at his numbers from this year. He was solid. He kind of had some down years after he left St. Louis. Wasn't very good with the Mets. Wasn't good with he wasn't very good with Tampa Bay either. And then with Boston, but he had a much better year this year with the Padres. 3.22 ERA. But his expected ERA was 4.30. FIP 3.89.
Sounds like a depth guy you're talking about.
8.31.
A veteran depth guy.
Strikeouts per 9. 134 innings. So he pitched in 24 starts too. So like he sounds like he consistently kept you in games. 2.6 F4. I mean, he sounds like a depth piece. Like, it would make sense for someone like him. And I don't know his contract situation, but
it's kind of a weird one. It's a 4-year, $26 million. So three years left on it, however much that is. He's got club options for the next 2 seasons. But if the club options are declined, then he starts getting player options. It's kind of confusing, and just like looking at it, the first time.
I think I heard something like
different, but
they have to decide on the team options. And if they don't, then the player options kick in.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So teams must decide on 24 and 25 together $16 million club options prior to 2024. At the club, so that's like in the next few days.
Yeah.
If the club options are declined, the 3 separate player options become available for $6.5 million in 24, $6 million in 25, and $6 million in 26. So it's like they would have to decide on it now.
Would you rather march out Wacha for a few starts, half a season worth of starts instead of Drew Smyly this year?
Well, you're not going to have to march out Drew Smyly next year.
Right. I'm just saying, like, from this past season, would you rather?
Even if Marcus Stroman opts out and you don't, for whatever reason, then you don't get something done with Kyle Hendricks, they still wouldn't have to march Drew Smyly out there.
Would you rather have that than Killian marching out there?
Yeah, but
that's what I'm saying. That's the type of.
But you're also mentioning a scenario
saying.
that it won't happen next year unless there's massive injuries.
No, but I get what he's saying as far
as depth, though. Sure, yes,
building up pitching depth, because we saw Caleb Killian have to pitch for the Cubs once or twice this year.
Once or twice, yeah.
Like we saw a scenario where it happened this year because they didn't have the depth.
Right.
And we thought they
That's
did.
Fair.
Right?
I misunderstood what you said.
This time last year we were like, they got Sampson. They got we were going through the list of guys that could make starts, and then all of a sudden the season started. It was like, hey, can Killian come up and do a start even though he's not pitching well?
Yeah. Well, I also think you say how you said that, but I believe that we would see Jordan Wicks earlier. And if Ben Brown doesn't have that injury, maybe we would have seen him earlier too. We didn't even see him at all. No. So as far as like how the depth was going into this year, I think there was good reason for more optimism, but obviously things didn't play out the way that we had hoped. So, and Sampson getting hurt too was a bummer because he was at least a solid guy that they had the year before. But yes, to bring it back around, Wacha, at least he has. He's been in the league since 2013, so he's got 10 years of experience on him. He's been on good teams, big of me to say considering he played for the Cardinals. He's been on good teams that have had success. He knows he knows how to win. He knows what it's like to be on winning teams. He probably brings some like veteran sort of not necessarily leadership, but a veteran presence that you need on a young team. And again, he would be a nice depth piece if you sustain an injury or something like that. Yeah. Yes. So, but going into 2024, would he be okay with, being a bullpen guy? Because right now, like with the way the things look, if you did make that trade and say Marcus Stroman opts in, like I don't see a spot for him in the rotation. That's the thing. And he doesn't make the rotation significantly better. So like, again, good depth piece. I just don't know how you use him.
It's funny because in that same Athletic article, it was talking about how Eovaldi was signed, and this might mean that they just go with a 6-man rotation because they got too many arms, and it was the same type of conversation, right? Like I don't know how this guy's going to fit in, where these guys all fit in. He's a nice depth piece, and then all of a sudden DeGrom can't go, and then they get hit with another injury, and it's like,
well, that's your guy.
Now you have guys with proven major league success that can go out there, and yes, maybe the minor league guys come up and have great success, but let's not bank on it.
Right.
Let's have some of those guys and that's why I didn't hate, if we grade Smiley today, that's why I didn't hate when the Cubs signed Drew Smiley, because he is that type of guy. He's had some success in the major leagues.
When it's also you can't bank on health either. I mean, like, to look at, when we first launched, right, we were talking about Wade Miley's going to be, the Cubs weren't going to have like a great rotation, but Miley is going to be one of their hopefully reliable starters, right? And he
was hurt.
He was hurt. He started the season on the IL. I don't even remember when he came back, but he hardly pitched throughout the year.
Yeah.
So you can't really bank on
he made
just
5 starts
health.
that season.
He definitely made 5 starts, but
he definitely didn't make 10.
I don't know. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, that was a guy that spring training we're sitting here saying, oh, like he's going to be in the rotation all year, maybe one of their top 3 starters, whatever, maybe they're number 3, and he wasn't healthy all year. So I get where you're coming from, but I get where Luke's coming from too, in that you can't just bank on, like, Ben Brown was hurt, but he also like had his struggles
in
the second half.
Yeah.
Like, so like
still don't really know exactly how Cade Horton will develop.
Same with Cade Horton, like,
or if Wicks will come back and do it again, right?
Because
Wicks could be
Wesneski, right? Yeah, can Wicks?
He could be.
So, but that's what I'm saying.
Thompson the next year.
So that's what I'm saying.
They're young guys.
You have no idea, and now that the longer they pitch, the more data is going to be out there that teams can figure out how to attack those guys, or just figure out how those guys try to attack them. So it's like, yes, you'd love if those young guys, cheaper, cost controlled, year control, can they come up and help anchor the back end of your rotation or whatever, or your pitching depth? Yeah, it'd be great, but I mean, we see it doesn't always happen. Mm-hmm. So maybe having a guy that has had he had a lot better year this year than he did the year before, but like, who's come off, like you said, he came off a few bad years when he left St. Louis, had a really good year, or a really solid year with the Padres. Is that a guy that you're not adding him to be your number 1, but you're maybe adding him to be like your 3 or 4, right? Like, so I don't know. Like, I think.
To get me up for it, I'd look forward to the Michael Walker revenge games against St. Louis. That's what I would get up for.
And I'm not saying just add major league guys to add major league guys. I'm not suggesting you do the pitching version of Hosmer, Mancini, and Rivas. Like
Barnhart.
Yeah.
But I do get the whole, and this is. It goes back to what everyone says, right? You can never have enough pitching, and we've seen that literally play out the last 2 seasons since we launched.
It's true.
The Cubs have never truly had enough pitching because the depth issues have seemed to come back to bite them.
Right.
At least a few times throughout both seasons where the depth that they may have thought they had did not work out. So you can never have enough pitching.
Obviously, I will assume that Walker would be part of the Juan Soto trade, in which the Cubs will obviously have to send some sort of arm with, say, a Christopher Morel, and whoever they send, that probably opens up the spot for Walker, whether it's the rotation or whether it's in the bullpen. So it's hard. Right now in this moment, it's hard for me to piece on how he would fit on the team, but
that's Jed's job.
Yeah, that's Jed's job. And theoretically, like, that's, I would assume the Padres are going to want a young pitcher or someone young to go with Christopher Morel if that trade scenario works out. And, obviously Christopher Morel is the one who makes the most sense that would go in the trade for Juan Soto. So,
all right. Well, anyways, it's fun to think about. We'll spend an entire offseason and winter talking about more of it. But we'll start to get those feelers. Like Ryan said, once we find out option stuff coming up in the next week, and then the general manager meetings, and the winter meetings, which we're kind of hoping we might be going to in Nashville.
People are saying.
There's rumors. But we are going to talk, despite what Michael Collada says, don't look back. Living in the past is for cowards and losers. Mike Ditka once said that. However,
said that?
But we always look back at 2016, and we always will, even if that makes me a coward and a loser.
I'll be a loser once a day.
Yes, that's right.
For the rest of my life. If that,
celebrate
if that
it every year.
Absolutely.
It should come around like your birthday. The Cubs won the World Series on this day.
It changed my life in some aspects.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't you wake up the next day and just feel completely different about how you looked at life?
Was the sky bluer, the trees were greener, the grass is greener?
Yeah.
There you go.
And on top of it, it was just one of the greatest baseball games you've ever watched.
Well, it might be the greatest baseball game ever played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Just in terms of what was on the line and how the game actually played out. It almost felt like it was scripted.
Can't have too much of the 2016 World Series champion Cubs. Can't have too much hero bread. See how I did that?
Ooh.
Even with a frog in the throat.
Big of you.
Why did I start using hero bread? I'll be honest with you. I'm not a carb counter. Some people are carb counters, and that could be a reason that you want to do it because low net carbs. But they have everything. They've got hot dog buns. They've got tortillas. They've got sliced bread. I did it because they brought some into the office, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute here. This stuff is light and fluffy and has a great flavor to it. Forget all the other benefits you get with this stuff. This bread is good. And who doesn't like good bread? It's like one of the great things in life. You find a piece of good bread. You talk about winning the World Series, made your day. You walk around and you're like, wow, that was a good bun on that burger. Or that was a good tortilla I just had, real fluffy tortilla. Or that sliced bread, what was that? That's the kind of thing that changes my day. You want to pick up my spirits? Give me a good piece of bread. Or give me one that's got, more protein in it. Low net carbs. They've got all of that. So it's got everything. It's got the taste, the texture, high fiber, ultra low net carbs. Did I mention that? Yeah, and 0 grams of sugar per slice of bread. Plus, use our discount code for the first purchase of Hero Bread. CHGO is the discount code. They'll give you 10% off at hero.co. Not com, hero.co. That's HERO.co. Sliced breads, buns, and tortillas. Available on hero.co and on Amazon, too, by the way. Right now, Hero Bread offering CHGO family 10% off that first order. Just go to hero.co, use the code CHGO to save on your Hero Bread today. That's hero.co to save 10% today. Listen, there's nothing better to do than eat bread and feel some new carpet under your feet in your house. Or maybe, as I've been trying to tell Cody, maybe it's new vinyl, laminate flooring. Something nice, durable. The best thing about Empire today is, as a kid, I loved the jingles, 588-2300. But
Empire.
they make searching for floors simple. It's a curated product selection. So their philosophy is, what they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they put in it. They take all the crap out, okay? They take all the garbage out. Nobody wants to buy a cheap carpet and find out, oh, I spent all this money and this carpet is garbage. So Empire eliminates all that stuff. So you're only looking through the good stuff. The good deals, the good stuff. You're not getting bad flooring. Nobody wants to buy vinyl flooring and find out, well, everything wore off and now it just looks like a plank. Empire they take the garbage, they shove it aside, they don't even put it in your selection. And then they have the virtual floor design guys that you can go into one of those virtual things, and it's a picture that you snap a picture, and instantly you can see how the new floors are going to look in your room, in your house, in your apartment. Shopping for floors at big box stores can be frustrating. You might walk in there, and all of a sudden you're talking to a guy who was a plumber the other day, and now all of a sudden he's selling flooring. Well, now flooring at Empire is all they do. You're not going to run into a plumber there. You're running into flooring experts. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. And by the way, they service their own warranties. If there's an issue arising, just call Empire, and they service the warranties themselves. You don't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive stunning, wait for it, $350 off. A $350 discount just by using the promo code CHGO. Free money, $350 off. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for all the details.
Barb says.
Oh, Barb.
Which we are live. She asked earlier. We never told her. We are live. She says the Cubs will trade Morel like Cody wants, and he'll hit more home runs than Soto, and Cody will say, why did they trade him? If there's any yelling from me related to a Juan Soto trade, like in the future, like in hindsight, it's going to be because the Cubs don't find a way to pay Juan Soto after the 1 year.
Yeah.
I will not. I promise you, Godmother, I will not be complaining about Christopher Morel potentially hitting more home runs than Juan Soto. The only way that I would be complaining is if Juan Soto just completely forgets how to hit.
Forever.
In which
he turns into Tatis, just a turd burger.
He would have to have a Cody Bellinger downturn, like he did before he came to the Cubs. In which then it's still hard for me to even to yell at the Cubs about it, because it's like you traded for a generational talent who had multiple years of playing at an elite level. Whatever the Cubs, I would just blame the Cubs for ruining him. That I wouldn't even complain about the trade. I'm very much on board for a Juan Soto trade, and if it doesn't work out, the only way that I would yell about the actual trade in hindsight is if they don't extend him after they get him.
The Juan Soto thing, if it doesn't work out because all of a sudden he forgets how to play baseball or he becomes injury prone, okay, is that a possibility with any contract? Yes, that could be Ohtani, okay, too. Yeah. But the only thing I want to know about any of these big name money guys, whether it's Yamamoto, if you can find out, whether it's Ohtani, if you can find out, whether it's Soto, if you can find out, what's in here. Talk to the right people. Find out what's inside their chest. I want to know, after I give them the bag of cash, after I give them their bag, are they going to play just as hard to try and win the World Series for me? That's all you want to know.
Yeah.
Are they going to give me off-season workouts that are worthy of the big bag of cash I just gave them?
I think one example of that was Bryce Harper, right? When he signed was 13-year contract and no opt-outs, right? That. So that was just
he wanted to be there.
Yeah, proof in the pudding that he wanted to be there. He wanted to win there, and he, whatever it was, raising his family there, whatever it was, he had no intentions of leaving. Just because, he got the money, he had no intentions of leaving and trying to cash in somewhere else, or, hitting the open market and trying to get, he was fine with what he got, and he wanted to be there long term and win. I think that those are the kind of guys you want, right? The guys that show, not just talk about it, but based on the things they do. I'm not saying that the guys have to settle for, or every guy should sign a long-term deal, no opt-out, so they can't cash in again, right? That doesn't help the overall player market and MLB players and their finances and contracts and stuff like that. That doesn't always help. But if you have a superstar who is making a ton of money on the contract they're signing and shows you that he wants to be there like that, those are the kind of guys you want. Those don't have to be the only guys you get,
right? But
those are definitely the kind of guys you want.
Yeah, find out what Yoan Moncada is like before you give him the money.
Yeah.
Avoid your Moncadas in free agency. Find out what's inside before you give him the bag of cash. That's probably the best thing any team can do in an offseason. It's not about being afraid to spend money. Just do your research. Find out what these guys are like. Find out what people who like them say about them, and find out what people who don't like them say about them. And then you decide who's right about the whole thing.
Barb says, yes, Soto will be a rental, and Cody will punch the wall.
Right. Yeah, she's also saying that Ian Happ's is a better defensive player than Juan Soto. Well, yeah, but Juan Soto is 100 times better as a hitter than Ian Happ is. So
yeah,
and that's why he's going to get paid. So 2016, let's do the super chats real quick first. Checking in, fellas. Fernando, $4.99. Happy Cubs 2016 Day. So Padres having financial problems, I heard. Who can we get from them? Go Cubs. Well, that's what we're talking about.
We're just
Soto and Waka. You read our minds.
Ricky De Ho. I can't say your last name, bro.
Hoyos?
Thank you.
De Hoyos?
Can't wait to see what happens now that the season is over. As always, credit to Cody for being Cody. Thank you, Ricky. Big of me.
You couldn't say Hoyos?
Okay, first off,
The Y is always
as someone with a
silent.
unique last name, I get anxiety about potentially saying someone's last name wrong because I hate it when people say my last name wrong.
Right.
Because I grew up in an area where no one knew how to say my last name because my last name wasn't fucking Smith or something
Wait,
basic.
how did they say your last name?
Yeah, I'm not going to say him live on
Nobody says
I
my
can
last
tell you
name,
after.
right?
I'm not going to say him here, though.
All right, that's fine.
Right.
Never
It's
mind.
like when people drop the T on my name, and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Accidentally
I'm just
drop
trying
the
to
T.
have
Oh,
some.
when they
I'm
call you
trying to show
Stuckmeyer?
respect
Yeah.
to our guy
Right.
Ricky.
That's not nice.
All right, I'm trying to show some
Drop
respect.
the T. The T is
I-
not silent in my name.
I just don't want to mess it up. It's not that I can't do it. I just don't want to mess it up.
Wait, I don't know. I got off tangent because who called you Puke Suckmeyer that one time?
Oh, I had a kid in high school that called me puke stuck on my tire. Yeah. Puke stuck on my tire.
That's so dumb.
Okay.
Okay.
My high
Sorry
school
for
basketball
going
team
off
called me
tangent.
puke for
No,
no
that's
reason
fine, that's
whatsoever.
okay.
Thank you, Ricky, for the super
Yeah,
chat.
both of you for the super chat.
Right.
Thank you so
Fernando.
much.
T is not silent. 2016. So we did mention the game. Like to me, you're right though. This should be a day. This should be New Year's Day, Christmas as you celebrate Christmas, right? What else? 4th of July, Independence Day is a good one. Cubs World Series Day. What? Why can't we celebrate that every year? I understand what Mike Ditka was saying when he said, living in the past is for cowards and losers. Sure, you don't want to just keep talking about the past like the 85 Bears because, by the way, it's about time you start putting a real team on the field. But at the same time, this is only 7 years, guy. I'm going to still be celebrating it at 15 years. I'm just hoping there's a second championship in there. I don't
Or at
want to
least
wait 100
competitive
years. You got
baseball.
Sox fans that are looking back now and going, oh, we passed the 5-year mark. We passed the 10-year mark. We're not even to the 10-year mark on the Cubs. Would I like to see them in the World Series more often? Would I have liked it? Obviously, the stunning thing is that it didn't continue a little bit longer than it did. Doesn't make what happened any less special. Like if the Rangers don't win again, Rangers fans are still going to remember 2023.
Yeah, I mentioned on the show, I wrote in the column I started on ALLCITY.com.
Is that up now?
It's up there,
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
I mentioned in like the third graph that, the Braves, Orioles, Brewers, and the Dodgers all won their division. They were, favorites to, be in World Series this year, and they didn't even get to the championship series. Right. The 2016 Cubs were the best team in baseball all season, had multiple weeks to just rest guys in September that year, and then won the World Series, right? Like, that team was just so I can't put into words other than just say that they were special. Just everything, like the stars aligned. Like that, maybe that's the only other way you can explain it. Like the stars aligned. They just played their best baseball that they possibly could at the right time. And obviously they had some performance from guys that you didn't necessarily expect. Like, for instance, David Ross had his best offensive season, arguably, of his career that year, his last season, right? Did anyone think Chris Bryant was going to win MVP in year 2 after winning the Rookie of the Year? Like, I thought he was going to be productive, but I didn't know if he was going to win MVP. You thought you had a really good duo of him and Rizzo. You signed Ben Zobrist, who had just won the World Series the year before. Is he going to continue that pace on the Cubs now with all these expectations? He did. And then, they signed Jason Hayward. His defense was a massive addition to them. Obviously, the offense never showed up, but they had all these expectations, all these things that just had to go correct for them to win the World Series that year, and it happened. And so when people talk about, oh, we didn't end up being a dynasty, we should have won more or whatever, well, at least we're not sitting here like for honestly, like the Dodgers, okay, they won the Mickey Mouse one in 2020 that no one gives a shit about. Congratulations, you've won the division. 10 straight years? You're a competitive team year in and year out. Yeah, I want the Cubs to be that. I want them to be a competitive team and be in the playoffs every single year. But they don't win in October on a consistent basis.
You'd rather have the Cubs World Series than their World Series.
Yes. and as much as I want the Cubs to be in the playoffs every year and competitive and just churning out the way, do things the way the Dodgers do. Again, I do want that, but I also want a deep playoff runs year in and year out. And the Dodgers, it's almost like every year they get in October and they just flop. They either get to the World Series and lose, or they maybe get to the championship series and then lose. This year they didn't even do that. They got swept by a team 21st in payroll, aka the Diamondbacks. And they were again. It's hard to use them as an example because the way they do things. I want the Cubs to be that, but at the same time, the point of this particular conversation is the Cubs won the World Series after a 108-year drought. It's hard to win, man.
How did it change your life? You said earlier it changed. The Cubs winning the World Series changed your life, the way you look at things. How did that game change your life?
Well, first off, it was the first time a team of mine had actually won the championship. I don't like to claim the Jordan Bulls because I was so young. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, when the Cubs, I think in a way that it changed my life is because I had been following, the rebuild that led up to it and just absolutely obsessed with whatever was going on with the organization at that time and still today, obviously. Sure. But watching how it blossomed into a championship, I don't know. I just woke up the next day and I just felt like I can believe in anything now. I can believe that the 2022 Cubs can win 85 games like I did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was a dumb take and it was one of the dumbest things I've ever said in front of a microphone that was in a recording camera. But you know what? It gave me the 2016 Cubs just gave me more delusional hope than I've ever had in my entire life. That's what they did. And I don't know. I'd rather, as much as it always ends in pain for a lot of things, not just baseball or Cubs, but a lot of things in my life, as much as it normally always ends in disappointment or pain or whatever, I don't know. I'd rather have hope than just always be pessimistic and dead inside. I'd rather have hope and then be dead inside later.
If the Cubs can win, why can't I?
Yeah.
Right?
They gave me confidence. I can go talk to that one girl.
That can happen. Now anything can happen.
That's a motto. That's something to live by right there.
Cubs can win. Why not me? The old Derrick Rose. Why not me? Why not me? The Cubs won.
I love that.
I'm curious for you, Ryan. What was the experience like as a Cubs fan? Because at that point, you're not hardcore into being in the press box and all that stuff, right? So, you're more of a fan perspective. You're watching it, and what's it like?
I mean, it was different. I was going to school in Missouri, so I was in Cardinals country, and there's a bunch of Royals fans, but I was in Cardinals country, right?
Personally, I wish I would have been in Missouri for that.
But no, I would
have been unsufferable.
Living in my fraternity house at the time, I don't know, 10. It was 60 plus guys living in the same house. Maybe 10 of us or so, 12, 15 were Cubs fans. And just took over. It was one of those where, had the Cubs not legitimately been, World Series favorites, honestly, at that point, I don't know that they would have let it. We took over the TV room. Every game was watched in that TV room, every postseason game, whatever. And I don't think the Cardinals fans would have allowed that had it not been legit. But, they got through the NLDS, the NLCS, and all of a sudden it's the World Series. And it's just and this is Cardinals fans also sitting in there watching games, seeing can the Cubs actually do this? I don't know. It was a different experience for me being in surrounded by Cardinals fans, but also having that little tight knit group of guys watching the Cubs, seeing the Cubs can win the World Series. And I mean, yeah, I guess for me it was 2003. I was 7. I just turned 7. Like I don't even remember it.
Right.
To be honest, like and now and like even in 2016, I couldn't have told you what 2003 was like. I just don't remember it. 2008, I was still pretty young, but like that was kind of like that was I guess a Cubs heartbreak at one point.
It was.
Yeah.
They were the best team in baseball and got swept by the Dodgers in 2008. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that was my first irrational.
Shall we not
angry.
forget?
Yeah. So, but it wasn't like, like my dad went through 84. Like he wasn't old enough for 69, but he had 84. He had 03. Obviously 08. Like just every year that.
A lifetime of failure.
Yeah. At that point, a pretty solid lifetime of failure, being a Cubs fan. So like, it was a little different for me just being as young as I was. That like I hadn't gone through all that, but it was still like knowing the history of the organization and the history of the decades and generations of fans waiting to see it and some never getting to see it, right? Like that, I don't know, that all played into it. And I think from anyone I was 20, 21 years old to however old people were getting to see it at the same time, it was like similar feeling of like, holy shit, they actually did it.
Yeah.
Right?
And Game 7 and the way they have to come back from down 3-1, no matter if the Cubs won the next 5 World Series, none of them would ever be 2016. Doesn't mean it wouldn't, like, we're not striving to see it or enjoy it or it wouldn't be just as much fun. None of them would be 2016 because it's 108 years and they're playing a team that hadn't won it in 60-plus years, and they have to come back from 3-1, and the team ties it, and it goes to extra innings, and it rains, and everything that played into it, right? Mm-hmm. It was the perfect team, the perfect manager, the perfect players at the perfect time. Everything was great about it.
Yeah.
So we'll never recreate that. It's just like when I watch the Bulls now, I know that we will never, no matter how great the Bulls get again, they will never recreate the Jordan era.
No.
It's not going to happen. But the closest thing we've ever had to feeling like the Jordan era, since the Jordan era, is the Cubs winning the World Series. Yeah. Now, White Sox fans might say 2005. No. One single team. This was an entire country. Not a country. We got people around the world that are just locked in. People going to cemeteries to watch the games on televisions with their dead relatives. Like, nothing will ever.
People going to the cemeteries to put the radio on.
I started the pursuit of a career going into college just to see the Cubs in the World Series someday, however that might be. Like, that's weird. Like, I get it. I was an idiot. I feel fortunate and lucky, but in reality, as a game plan, I wouldn't suggest that to anybody going into school right now. Like, hey, you should build your career around trying to be there when the Cubs win the World Series. Like, that's just sort of dumb.
Yeah.
Because you might wait 108 years and never have a job.
Yeah, I also think kind of what Cody said is just going through that whole, 4 years of rebuilding or 3 years of rebuilding. I know, like they
were
tough
time.
That adds to it too, though. The pain before the immediate pain right before.
Well, because it was like they had the 07 and 08 teams. Like 07 wasn't like a great team, but they won the division. They ended up getting swept anyway in the playoffs. And then 08, you had the best team in the National League, and they get swept. So then you had like 2009, 2010, like those just years mediocre. Were just like. Yeah. Like, I think people had hopes because some of those guys were still around, but they ended up not doing anything. And then it got to 2011. Then Theo comes in, right? Was it after 2011 when Theo comes in?
Yeah.
And he basically straight up says, like, we're gonna tear it all down. Like, we're gonna hit the reset button and try to build this thing back up. But at least he was like, at least it was like an open, transparent message about what they were gonna do, and like it
was new. Yeah. It was new for my whole lifetime. Yes. It was the first time somebody said, we're not going to put a Band-Aid and sign so-and-so, an average player, and tell you we've got a shot.
Yeah, right. Like, it wasn't.
I got a plan. This is the plan. Suck it up. We're going to do it.
Yeah, it wasn't every single year they signed some random free agent or bring in a couple guys and they're like, hey, we have World Series expectations. Like, it was very clear that they didn't. And so that's why I guess, like, not that it was easy to stomach losing, but it was like, okay, like no one was expecting the World Series going in, whatever. Like, let's see how this prospect they just drafted. Let's see how all this stuff goes. And you sit through that for 3 years until you finally get to like towards the end of 14, and okay, like you're seeing some signs, and then you get to 15, and obviously they go on their run, and then 16 is the World Series. So it's like you if you were paying attention, you sat through that rebuild, hoping and praying, obviously, that the end game was going to be what 2016 brought, and when it finally did, maybe it felt like even more validation for what, as I guess as a fan, you decided to go through, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And what I was going to add to this, how the rebuild was, I mean, Cardinals won the World Series in 2011. I was fucking miserable on top of the Cubs, like, starting this rebuild. And then they were good for a couple more years after that. They went back to the World Series in 2013. I had to deal with a lot of slander. And, like, I don't do it anymore because, like, I feel like if I got to get my 2 cents out there before I can't say anything at all. But in college, I was the quiet guy when it came to chirping to Cardinal fans until after they won the World Series because they still have won a World Series more recently.
Then you were unbearable.
Then I was unbearable. The entire year after the Cubs won the World Series, I was the most insufferable Cubs fan probably on this planet. There's probably others, but, like, I would like to rank myself. I put that on my tombstone whenever I'm dead. All I'm saying is, like, part of the rebuild was so tough because your rival team was doing well on top of just, like, will they actually build something and get it to work? Because it was a very slow process.
You had to sit through it for 3 years.
I mean, I remember
before it started really clicking.
I remember sitting in my internship in the summer of 2014 and just going absolutely bonkers because Javier Baez hit a home run in Colorado in, like, September in a season where it didn't matter. But, like, I had read up on Javier Baez for a few years, and everyone was saying this guy's going to be the next, whoever. And I obviously have been following Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and all these dudes during that time, and for it to play out the way that it did going into 2015 and through that season and then all the way to the World Series in 16, it's like we say it all the time, like that was one of the luckiest things that that can ever happen. So that's why we say in present day about you can't rely on the prospects, you can't rely on this, you gotta bring in a guy like Juan Soto. You can't hold on to whoever because of this. A lot of people who think the other way, it's like they think what happened in that era, the golden era, can just happen again.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like
the game's changed.
The way that it happened was so unreal, and like
it was like the cosmos lining at the same time.
The rules have changed, the game has changed, money has changed, everything's changed.
Exactly. But I'm just adding on to emphasizing just how like completely asinine that all of it happened the way that it did. Like it truly is in some ways, if you really dig into it and think about it and see some of the moves that they made that got them there, it's unbelievable. No one thought Jake Arrieta was going to be a Cy Young. You know what I mean?
But he was.
Like, that's another thing. The Cubs need to find their next Jake Arrieta. They need to make a random ass trade that no one talks about or gives a shit about, and that person turns into an all-star player. They need to find their Adolis Garcia. That's what they need to do.
That is an interesting thought, and it will be a podcast next week that I've already thought about a little bit. That's a teaser.
That's a
By the
tease.
way, so we're never going to recreate 2016 and winning the World Series, right? Like that feeling. But the closest thing to it would be using CIRCA Sportsbook. Right now,
That's fair.
the best way to do it, CIRCA.
Best way to do it, to get that feeling, is through winning all your money.
Paying money on CIRCA.
Paying your rent through all the money you make through CIRCA, yes. Because tight money line splits. One of the best things about CIRCA. Games will strive to be a -110 split on the CIRCA Sports menu, unlike other sports books, which may use -115 or -120. CIRCA Sports keeps as little money as possible on large market bets, especially compared to other books. CIRCA Sports does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit winning players. They do encourage bettors to download and explore other sports betting apps available, but it is something that they strive to have, is not taking away from people who are really good at sports betting, which in my personal opinion, sports betting truly is a skill. It's not just something that is all based on luck. There is some luck involved, but I do feel like it is truly a skill. And then finally, the best thing, arguably at least, because all three of these things that I'm mentioning are huge on why they're so great. The customer service, it's top notch. All right, there are real people behind CIRCA Sports brand who resolve issues in a timeline fashion, unlike other books who use chatbots. No one likes chatbots.
Absolutely not.
No bots.
All aspects of the app are being run by the same team that runs the main CIRCA Sportsbook at CIRCA Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Download the CIRCA Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Also be on the lookout for CIRCA events, watch parties, and tailgates. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyourreallywinning.com.
By the way, while you're at it, get fitted out with the best sports gear around. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, everything in between. Maybe a nice warm hoodie for the winter that's coming up.
I saw our guy, Mike Dubs, got the overalls.
Oh, yeah, from
you go,
FOCO.
Mike
Our friends at
Dubs.
FOCO, that's the place. They've got the
our
Aloha
guy.
shirts, the polos, the bags, set decorations right here. It's where you can get your Wesneski bobblehead right now. Check out FOCO.com. Click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO for 10% off. Ooh, look at the slides. Huh?
Yeah.
They have the Crocs too.
Oh, the Croc-like slides like that.
You're going to want to go to CubsCon
Ooh,
with
look at
something.
Robbie
from
agrees
there.
with me.
There's some Christmas
PJs.
decorations.
Holiday
Holidays
PJs.
coming up. Holiday PJs. I wonder if the match warm.
Oh,
bobblehead's
warm
still there.
slippers, yeah.
Yeah.
I've threatened to come
I
in
really
in
want that
slippers
match
someday.
warmer
Oh,
bobblehead.
gloves.
Mainly to put on the set.
Cubs gloves. There's no neon Cub slides. See, those are from when you go away somewhere warm. Maybe you go to the beach this winter.
Can you scroll back to the top there real quick, Sarah? Like that, is that like a Chicago flags with a, like those overalls at the top? This is a
Right above
Chicago
the- oh,
flag.
Chicago flag
yeah.
overalls.
But it has a Cubs logo on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the stars
Those are
on it.
pretty cool.
I kind of
Wow.
like that.
pretty
I
cool.
kind of like that.
Yep.
We need to
dig
get
'em.
one of those here. Like we have like just the regular Cubs one here, but like I'm kind of digging these to wear to CubsCon this year.
Nice bib overalls. Well, I mean, you could use those for shoveling. You could use those for sledding. You could use those just for everyday wear.
I could just wear them to bed.
Spicing things up.
I could wear them on set.
Spicing things up at home a little bit. The Cubby overalls.
Go on a date.
Yeah, go on a
Sure,
date
the
in
girl will
those.
think I'm normal completely.
Yeah. Cody shows up, blind date, Cubby overalls, nothing else.
I'm just letting her know immediately that I'm some psycho. That's it.
Scary.
Some psycho fan.
That's a good way
All
to do
right,
it.
let's do our super chat real quick because we only got like 3 minutes to do our 3 grades that we have to do. So these are going to be fast grades today.
That's fine.
Super chat from Chris. I know that Morel has tons of interest, but do you think there's any way to send somebody else, or do you think he's going to be a big piece of a trade? Yeah, obviously, but you might end up dealing another guy that's Cubs players. He's just an obvious guy because we see that the Cubs aren't sure where to play him.
Yeah.
But I'm not positive that other teams are sure where to play him either. So it's just sometimes it might be too obvious. So I'm not 100% sure that Christopher Morel's not going to be back with the Cubs next year because they do value what he does.
Right.
Chris, you know what? Let's give him his 5-star review. Remember the chat.
Yeah.
Chris is here every day, so he fits the attendance. He fits the super chats. He agrees with me occasionally. That's another one.
I think he agrees with me too sometimes.
He agrees
Yeah, I
with
don't know
you
if he's ever
sometimes.
agreed with me, but
He has some
I've been paying
funny
attention.
comments.
Does.
Everything we want in a chat member. Chris is now our 4th member of the 5-star club. 5-star club.
Congratulations, Chris.
Chris, congratulations.
Let us know
Now,
your
we should
favorite
probably
part
get
of the,
like
of the rating.
We could maybe get a $50 super chat for saying that, but that's another
Yeah,
story.
that'd
So let's grade real quickly
Okay.
Trey Mancini and Drew Smiley. Who do you want to do first? Because the Godfather, Michael Collada, wanted a little negativity.
And he's not even here today. I haven't seen him in the chat.
He was there earlier.
Oh,
You
he
know,
was?
We're going to celebrate
see
2016,
him.
but we're going to finish with a little bitterness.
Where's Collada?
Trey Mancini, I gave him an F+. Why did I give him an F+? Well, look at his numbers. 234, 4 home runs, 28 RBI, and that's what you got for $7 million. The positive news, he wasn't a turd,
Yeah.
and the Cubs were willing
fair.
to make him walk away for the right price. So it's not going to hurt them long term. They missed. They swung and they missed. It was a mistake. I didn't think it was a horrible signing when they signed him. I thought it was okay.
I didn't either.
And most of all, it failed. They cut bait when they needed to. They overplayed him. But they finally cut bait, and most of all, at least he wasn't a turd. At least he wasn't in your clubhouse being a complete boob.
Yeah,
so in that way, I give him the plus. So he was closer to it.
You gave him a plus because he
was
wasn't
closer
like Milton
to
Bradley.
a passing grade than he was, a full failure.
I'll agree with that. Like, having been around him in the clubhouse, talking to him, he came on, did an interview with him down in spring training when he first got there. He's a good guy. He's a guy that has
someone like that.
Yeah, he had great perspective, obviously going through different things that he had gone through in his life, and
Cancer,
able to reach out to guys across the league that are going through similar stuff and give advice, or just, I think his perspective, that kind of stuff changes perspective a lot. And so he had he was just a really good guy to be around. That said, it was not a great season for him. Slightly.
Ended up with the Reds and then released by the Reds too.
I don't know if he ever did he make it up to the Reds at all?
I just know they had picked him up, and then eventually they just
I want to
said no.
say for the entire year, he had the lowest F-WAR for any Cubs player. He was a minus 0.8 or something like that, I thought.
So that's why you went F? Straight F?
I mean,
Can't even give him the good guy plus?
So he's a negative 0.8 WAR.
All right, we got to go. Sarah's giving us the wrap. All right.
74 WRC. It just wasn't great. The offense never came around. His defense wasn't good. He had
His defense cost him games.
He had the one game where he had the go-ahead hit in St. Louis.
Yes.
That I had said earlier in our Discord that hey, this might be a situation where Trey Mancini might be good. Comes up big. I look like a genius.
Humble of you.
That was your favorite part of the Trey Mancini era?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Besides him being a nice guy.
Being a nice guy.
It was. I mean, they paid him. They're paying him again next year, I believe, to not be on the team.
Yeah,
It was a signing that a lot of people wanted, just didn't work out at all. And they released him when they needed to. Maybe they could have done it earlier, but
he got more run. He deserved more run than a guy like Eric Hosmer, who was on a 1-year vet minimum. They gave Mancini a 2-year, $14 million deal. I was honestly surprised when they cut bait. But
at the time, I was a little bit surprised, too.
I was surprised just based off how the organization works. But, yeah. No,
$7 million in 2024, by the way, for Mancini.
So, for me, I can't. My favorite part of the Trey Mancini era was the friends we made along the way. That's what I got for you.
Good news is we're all going to die someday.
So there's your bad grade for Collada.
We'll save Smiley for Monday.
Okay. Yeah. Big of us. Big
of us.
We gave everyone 2 teases going into next week.
That's right. A lot of teases for next week. Corey and Brendan coming up on tomorrow's show. It comes up live at 1:20. The show's not actually live, but it posts at 1:20.
Post at 1:20.
Barb asks why they don't come on live. It's because they don't have time to come on live at the time that it goes live, which is at 1:20.
That's right.
Because they have other jobs.
Yep.
And they probably don't want to deal with some people in the chat. No, I didn't say that. I'm joking.
Well, you said it.
I did. All right. Have a great weekend.
You all have to work on getting your 5-star grades.
Chris, enjoy your 5-star weekend. Hope you certainly earned it. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Hit the like button on the way out and fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.